Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to welcome Samarth Mahajan, a distinguished documentary filmmaker whose work captures the heart and soul of India. Um, an alumnus of the prestigious Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, Samarth has made significant contributions to the world of documentary filmmaking and acclaimed works such as The Unreserved and Borderlands. His films, which shed light on the stories of ordinary people, have earned several accolades, including 2 National Film Awards and recognition at international film festivals. Welcome to the interview, Mr. Samarth Mahajan.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, Shivam. I'm very happy to meet you and Vivek. I'm very excited for our conversation. Thanks for reaching out to me, having me on the podcast. Looking forward to a conversation.
Thank you so much for your time, Samarth. All right. Vivek, you're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chalo. Okay. So I know it's too late to say this, Samarth, but congratulations for your national awards. And it's we are so proud to know that someone from our college is like achieving things like these, endeavors like these. And it's proud to say that not only in academics, not only in the field that IITs are reputed for, it's a field that is so niche, and you've done so well in this. It fills our heart with so much of motivation that if we have the if we have the vision to achieve something, it's really possible. So hats off to that, Samad.
Thank you so much, Shivam. In fact, the last I was on campus. I kept on visiting campus, but I think once I was on campus and I was receiving the Young Alumni Achiever Award, and this is exactly the
Yes.
thing that I said. The thing that I pointed out was that I was probably the only one in that whole collection of people who was not from technology or science. But the way Kharagpur is, we are attuned to learn so much outside our curriculum, and most of our learning is outside the classrooms, and we end up learning so much. So Kharagpur had a pivotal role in making me a filmmaker because we are allowed to participate in events like ad design. We are allowed to sort of uh, think of those possibilities where we also work with films and visual mediums, and so all credits to Kharagpur for whatever has happened.
That's really kind of you. That's really kind of you. All right. I think we can begin with the questions. All right. I think we have some really nice questions curated for you, and I think that will help us know you better, as well as the film industry better, and how one can take this route ahead. So Vivek, would you like to start?
Yeah. Since you are from film industry, we would like to give a session. We would like to give a session more fun. Let's start with the most important question for KGPN. What was your hall?
So I was from the Meghnad Saha Hall of Residence, and it I in my first year I was in Triple M, and second year I was put in Meghnad Saha Hall, and the I really tried changing my hall. I don't know if you're all allowed to do hall swaps or not. Are you allowed now? So
It's very difficult.
it's
Yeah.
very
No,
difficult,
no.
right? So back
Yeah.
then it was not so difficult. You had to do some jugards. You had to find seniors in other hostels to get into their hostels. So Meghnad Saha it was a very young hall back then. Right now, I don't know. Like I'm talking about 15 years back. It was a very young hall, and people used to not want to go to a young hall. They wanted to go to the Pan Loop or RK
And
or RP. And I really tried hard, but then and I spent a day in Azad Hall actually. And the only reason why I came back to Meghnad Saha was that Meghnad Saha Hall was the only hall which had English style seats, so that I could
oh,
take a dump nicely and more comfortably. And I have no idea, I have no idea how it is now, but back then, Pandu, all hostels used to have like Indian style toilets, and I was like,
okay.
I stayed a day and I was like, I can't do this. Let me go back to MS. So I loved my hall purely because we could like shit in style.
Oh my God, that was a really quirky story. That is a really funny way of selecting a hall.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I
okay.
got into like major fights with my seniors because they thought that I want to leave the hall. But then I came back on my accord and they got totally confused that
Okay.
what am I doing? Then they did not buy my logic. They completely thought I was lying. But I don't know. Does Panloop has English style seats now?
It
No,
has
now
got now.
now it has. Now it
Wow,
has.
beautiful. You're all lucky. Great.
Right. Okay, that was quite a story. So like Samarth, just following up to Vivek's question. So like we all have a kind of all have like an innumerable number of what do you say memorable experiences in KGP. Would you like to highlight one or two such stories which have impacted you a lot? May be funny, it may be something that it hits your mind right now.
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure. I think there's still this society which is called robotics, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
So I was part of the robotics society, and we used to organize a few events during Shitij, which is our techno management fest, right?
Yes.
So in the run up to that whole thing, at the beginning of the year, we used to do a freshers workshop. I think वो अभी भी होता होगा, like
हाँ जी,
ज़्यादातर
हाँ जी,
societies freshers workshop करते
जी.
होंगे. So I was in charge in my second year. I had to do the presentation, and I completely fucked up. Like it was such a bad presentation. I did not see the presentation before starting to present it. Someone else, some first year made it. And
Mhm,
then I just was, winging it. मैं पहुंच गया हूँ. I think it was Kalidas Auditorium. And,
mhm.
there are like 600, 700 first years.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
just am unable to present because I don't know what I'm talking about. Also, I was not the most technical person in the team. But it really scarred me. And right after that, we had a meeting with the third years who completely like fucked us up. Like, पूरा मतलब बिल्कुल पेल दिया हम लोगों को. तो फिर I think that was a big and I cried. And I think that
Mhm.
was probably the first and only time I cried during my KGP stay.
CGPs.
And it's not easy to cry, like especially being a guy
Understand.
and being from Punjab, you're not taught to cry. But it was so difficult that I was moved to tears. And I think that just changed me as a person fundamentally. Like right after that, I think I've never seen any presentation, any talk, any call, any project. Everything has to be hyper organized, hyper managed, hyper planned. To the extent that in my fourth year we had an ad design competition. I practiced with my juniors, where in our presentation they would clap. सो मैनेजमेंट मतलब उस लेवल तक चला गया कि देखो हम ऐसा बोलेंगे इस पॉइंट पे तुम ताली मारोगे तो हम सब बिल्कुल मतलब वो तो नेक्स्ट लेवल
समझा.
ऑफ बकचोदी हो गई विच आई ओनली लर्न फ्रॉम पैन लूप ओनली पैन में कुछ लोग करते थे तो मैंने सोचा मैं अपने हॉल में करता हूँ बट आई थिंक दैट एक्सपीरियंस रियली चेंज मी टॉट मी दैट if we don't want to fail while failure is okay, it's okay to fail. We can plan to not fail. We can try our best to do well. So I think that was one core memory which I still carry. It is not a very happy memory, but something that makes me feel motivated to do my best.
That was quite a story. That was something that I suppose, somewhat like just to share, like some of our like batchmates or some of our juniors, they enter societies on a very like for the first time. They are getting out of that jail cocoon. That because like 11 and 12 is spent like total isolation. It's a very solitary time where like they prepare for joint entrance exams with like full force, and when they suddenly come into college and get into societies and some rejections here and there, they get totally demotivated and they don't join any societies anymore. So I think for them watching this, I think it's a very big motivation that it's not your fault. I suppose you just need a bit more planning, a bit more practice. I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
uh, yeah. So moving on to the next one. Like most of us dreamt of being actors when we were small, of course, like seeing movies of Akshay Kumar, Shah Rukh Khan. So personally, like for me, it was a writer because I always loved those scripts, those beautiful scripts written. I always like fantasized about being such a good writer, about mentioning every keen detail in a movie. So, what was your childhood like in this sense? And were you fascinated by movies? Were you more fascinated by the direction or the writing? And also the one good final question: who was your idol? Who was your
Okay.
yeah? Got
So I think growing up, I never thought I'll be a filmmaker. In fact, right out of Kharagpur, also, I didn't think I'll be a filmmaker. I, in fact, joined ITC as an operations manager right out of college. And at your stage, I was, you are all in your third year summers. In my third year summers, I was interning with ITC. But I think being an Indian, there's definitely a fascination with cinema because cinema and Bollywood are such a big thing in India. So we obviously went and watched a lot of films. My core memory from childhood is watching Lagan in a packed theater. And Lagan had done a very interesting thing where they had not publicized it's a film about cricket. So in on the TV, none of the ads ever had any mention of cricket. So when we went to the theater, people went crazy. And that kind of impact a film could have on people. Like I am seeing people and they are actually behaving as if there's an India-Pakistan match going on. And people are shouting and clapping. And I'm assuming this is right before you were born, or this is 2001.
Yeah,
And
all right.
right, so it was just fascinating to see the amount of impact cinema could have. At the same time, there was no inclination to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be an astronaut till a long time. And then after a point, I realized, fuck, मैंने astronaut वाला तो कुछ किया नहीं, मैं तो engineering की line में आगे बढ़ गया हूँ. And then I just accepted that I have to be an engineer.
Perfect.
But I think once I was in my job and I did not enjoy it much, then I was looking for ways to come out of that field. And then I just reflected on my Kharagpur experience, and Kharagpur is where I saw a lot of good films. मेरा एक बैचमेट था सनवीर सिंह करके उसका नाम है. तो and he was also from Punjab. So we were wingmates. He was in mechanical also. So he showed me a film called A Clockwork Orange, which is by a filmmaker called Stanley Kubrick. No, so
Okay.
Stanley Kubrick is one of the greatest filmmakers ever. He's an American film. He made films in America, although later he shifted to UK because Americans thought he's a communist. But he made such wonderful films. I think he made 10 films in his career, but each film is a masterpiece. So he became kind of an idol. And the first film I saw was A Clockwork Orange, which just completely shifted my idea of cinema, which was, I think, in my first or second year on campus. Uh, that film is ultra violent. It has a lot of gore. At the same time, it makes you feel a lot. So everything Bollywood will never show you. Like you will
Absolutely.
never see nudity in Bollywood. Like 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 a totally nude person in the film. You will not see hyper violence. Like
Correct.
animal and all nothing in front of this film. Like it's that kind of violent. Like because it's not over the top violence. It's like Vivek might come and hit you kind of a violence. Sure.
Oh
So
my God.
so I mean you feel really it's really twisted. It fucks with your head. So I think Kharagpur is where I started understanding that cinema is interesting. Direction was natural because I think I'm a very narcissistic person. I love myself. I love my opinions. I feel I have better opinions than most of the people. And generally, I'm not a technical person. I feel I'm a better manager than with the camera. Someone has to be technically very good. With the editing,
Yeah,
someone has to be technically very good. I
correct.
think I'm more of a people's person who can get people together and get things done. So that was more of a directorial thing. Yeah.
Understood. Like that was like a very good overview of like whatever like your aspirations were as a kid. And I suppose you were totally very honest with your with yourself. I mean that gives a very good tinge to this interview because
Mhm.
like most of the interviews are very gold plated. So we don't get to understand the person like with good perspective. But I think this one
Mhm.
is different because we are understanding you better. We are getting to know what exactly led you to become a good filmmaker. And yeah, I think we can move on to the next question. Vivek, yeah.
Yeah. When you entered the industry, KGP seniors were already doing well with TVF Pitchers. Was this your final spark? Have you worked with them?
So, like I said, my spark was my hate for my job. I mean, I just could not sit in my office. When I was working, I could not get out of my bed. I did not feel like taking a bath. I did not
Oh
feel
my
like changing my
God.
clothes. So I was not happy ultimately. And so I quit my job first. And then I thought, कि यार अभी करूँ क्या? And and that is when filmmaking was one of the things. I was also trying to apply for a fellowship, which is in the field of education. I was discussing a startup with two of my batchmates. So तीन चार चीजें एक साथ चल रही थी, and by chance filmmaking worked out. So for me, the spark honestly was just I did not want to do whatever I was doing in the past. Uh, about TVF, I think they are a major inspiration, not only for KGPN, especially for KGPN, since they came out of our college. Most of the core team is from our college. But I think generally in the cultural landscape of India, I think they were the first ones to use internet the way they did. They were the first ones to use YouTube the way they did. They came up with the idea of an Indian web series, है ना? उससे पहले बहुत ही कम होता था, मतलब गिने चुने कुछ होते थे और लोगों ने देखे नहीं थे. उन्होंने जब TVF पिक्चर्स बनाया तो लोगों ने देखा, एंड आई थिंक नेटफ्लिक्स और प्राइम तब इंडिया में आए भी नहीं थे. So it was always nice to see their journey and feel ke as outsiders also we can do something. But since their work is totally in fiction, mine is totally in non-fiction and documentary. So we've not had the opportunity to work together. But I have immense respect for Bisuda, Biswa Kalyan Rath, Jituda, and Arunab. I think they're all stars in their own ways, and I have huge admiration and seek a lot of inspiration from them.
That was yeah. Thank you so much for that. I mean, the kind of environment you seniors have built for us, like the kind of like we had an interview just before this. It was with Mr. Partha Ghosh, the Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership. Like he was the one who created that, and he was saying कि तुम लोग जो हो ना मतलब हमारे बनाए हुए उस पे वो कर रहे हो. He was a 1971 pass out. And he was saying कि all of this KGP का जो भी तुम्हारे पास वो है ना जो तुम टैग लेके घूमते हो ये सब मतलब तुम्हारे सीनियर्स का बना हुआ है. मतलब वो भी दिख रहा है. हमने 3-4 इंटरव्यूज लिया आपसे बात कर रहे हैं वो दिख रहा है कि मतलब हाँ okay our seniors have done a lot to make this institution so prestigious.
Right. But
All right.
I'll add one thing here.
Yes,
there's a time till we gain from the tag, and there's a moment after which we need to give back to the tag.
correct.
That's how this cycle of like I would want you to come back, like Shivam or Vivek. I would want you to come back 20 years later and tell someone कि तुम लोग हमारे बनाए हुए tag पे जी रहे हो. Because that's the only way this whole brand is gonna sustain. And I honestly feel कि एक point तक ये tag हमें help कर सकता है, उसके बाद हमें justice करना है कि हमारे पास ये tag है. That's
Correct.
how I look at it, and I think where Partho comes from is a place of reminding you कि देखो बहुत मेहनत गई है ये सब करने में, अब तुम्हारी बारी है.
correct correct that's absolutely wonderful. Yes.
Yeah.
और हम भी कोशिश करेंगे कि कुछ ना कुछ तो करें इसके लिए. मतलब जितना इसने हम इस कॉलेज ने हमको दिया है उतना आई थिंक वी हैव टू रिटर्न लाइक इन आवर लाइफ टाइम at least. So moving on, when I was watching the Unreserved, I feel the concept was like really fresh, something that was not like really captured before this. And nowadays, like Bollywood has this element missing, kind of like being close to reality because it's kind of getting unnatural nowadays. So your documentary does it perfectly. So we want to know how did the Unreserved happen? Like how did it come to you, and how you proceeded with the further processes?
Right. So I think I should mention the role of another friend of mine. His name is Ashay Gangwar, and he's also from Kharagpur. We graduated the same year. He's from Azad Hall. So he started a company called Camera and Shots, and his vision was around documentaries. He wanted to do documentaries. I had just quit my job and come to Mumbai, and we happened to meet, and we decided to work together. And Ashay's focus was a lot on travel and people. And I started thinking on those lines, and I was personally very connected to trains. I had, since childhood, obviously, I had traveled in trains, but I had also done something called Jagriti Yatra. It's like a 2-week train journey around India where you meet a lot of social entrepreneurs. And I had really enjoyed that whole experience. So the idea was, ki, acha, okay, Asha is interested in travel and people. I am interested in trains. Let's try and club this. And then one thing that happened was we failed to get permissions from the Ministry of Railways to shoot. And the moment we failed, because initially the film was imagined to be shot in all classes of the trains, we realized that there is only one class where without permissions we can exist. And that is the general dabba. कि India में जो TT का role है, partly they are checking the tickets and partly they are taking bribes, right? So जनरल डब्बे में लोगों के पास ना पैसा है ना टिकट है, तो आई मीन टिकट नहीं भी है वो आके चेक करेंगे तो लोग पैसा नहीं दे पाएंगे, तो आई मीन they'll basically stick to the sleeper and AC classes. That was a calculated risk we took, and that's how the idea sort of came to its final shape. कि आशय को कुछ करना है, मुझे कुछ करना है, परमिशंस नहीं मिल रहे हैं, फिर भी हमें फिल्म बनानी है, तो जनरल डब्बों में हम लोगों ने अपनी दुनिया बना ली उन 17 दिन के लिए.
That was really nice. तो आप मतलब पूरे 2 हफ्ते आपने जनरल डब्बा में ट्रैवल किया?
17 दिन. I still
Oh
remember
my
9th March to 25th March 2016. That was like 17 days when we were just traveling in general dabbas. We were a 3 people crew. मैं था, मेरा cinematographer था और मेरा assistant director था.
Oh my God, that is really nice. तो did you guys feel like मतलब जनरल मतलब उस टाइम का सीन कैसा था? अभी तो जनरल डब्बा में बिल्कुल बैठने की कुछ जगह नहीं मिलती. So
यार
इतना
ये
अनकंफर्टेबल था.
1917 से यही सीन है. तो there is a very interesting essay by Gandhi. It's called Traveling in Third Class of Indian Railways. तो 1917 का एक आर्टिकल है जिसको मैंने अपने फिल्म के एंड में कोट भी किया है. यू रीड दैट, इट्स अ 3 page आर्टिकल. वो डिस्क्रिप्शन, एक्सेप्ट कि टॉयलेट ऐड हो गया है. पहले टॉयलेट भी नहीं था 1917 में. अभी टॉयलेट ऐड हो गया है तो लोग टॉयलेट में जाके भी बैठते हैं. मतलब वहां पे दे डोंट शिट, दे गो एंड सिट. So it's just been like that, and I don't know if it'll change anytime soon. यार, our country is a little fucked that way. कि inequality बहुत है, गरीबी बहुत है, and things need to change in a big way for our general dabbas to become less congested. So I think the focus with the kind of economy we have is to not tackle inequality. So that our GDP is increasing, but alongside the GDP, our inequality is increasing. So the people who are poor generally, they are still poor. Like what has happened obviously is कि उन्होंने BPL ही change कर दिया. Like you have 100 rupees, and previously if you had 100 rupees you were poor, and I say कि नहीं, अभी से calculation में 80 रुपए कर दिया मैंने, तो तुम अमीर बन गए हो by calculation, but actually you're not, right?
Correct.
So I think fundamentally if our country starts focusing on reducing poverty and inequality, तो हमारे जनरल डब्बों में रश कम होगा. बट आई मीन तब भी वैसे ही था. दिस इज अ मोर सोशियो पॉलिटिकल आंसर, बट इन शॉर्ट तब भी वैसा ही था. एक डब्बे में अगर 80 लोगों की जगह है तो 200 लोग हैं, 250 लोग हैं. खड़े रहने की जगह नहीं है. मेरे सिनेमेटोग्राफर का डे 2 पे एलिफेंट फुट हो गया था. पैर फूल जाता है.
हाँ जी.
So he got an elephant foot because there was no place to sit. So we were standing for like 12 hours, 13 hours. टॉयलेट में लोग बैठे हैं. लोगों ने झूले टांग रखे हैं जनरल डब्बों में.
my God.
वो सारे शॉर्ट्स हैं, ट्रेलर में भी हैं वो शॉर्ट्स, फिल्म में भी हैं वो शॉर्ट्स. तो जनरली काफी क्रेजी था. मतलब खाना बहुत बुरा था, बहुत ऑयली था. आफ्टर अ पॉइंट माय थ्रोट choked, and I couldn't eat anymore. So I blacked out while doing an interview. Like I fell.
Oh my God.
That was one day before we crossed KGP. So one of my best memories from the whole trip was also passing through Hijli station. And I remember 13 or 14 juniors came because they were following us on social media, and they got Arabian Nights ka shawarma, break and bite some chicken dish, some naans they got, है ना? So tikka se they got some chop. So it was so much fun to cross KGP, but it was quite a crazy experience. It was, I would say general dabbas are very similar. Maybe they've become worse. मैंने भी थोड़ी देर से travel नहीं किया general डब्बों में.
Alright, that was quite a description. Alright, so just following up to this, like every story is like quite special. I mean, and the Unreserved is no different. And this also like our teams believe that the story is something that it was it was there in front of our eyes, but it needed a bit more vivid description, right? Which your like movie did so. So, and like if you see the film very carefully, if we've our team has like seen the movie, and whoever like saw it, they were like, how can someone come with such a perfect blend? Like it has all the elements. I mean, So starting on a lighter note with the talent of an old man, then like talking serious issues of women, and then unemployment, then like it covers all aspects that we need to hear. Then how did you come up with this perfect blend? That's one big question our team wants to know, and all people who have watched the Unreserved, they want to know.
I think the nice thing was that it wasn't so calculated.
Right.
I think the only thing I had in my mind before starting to travel was that I want to hear people, I want to talk to people because my exposure to India is very less. मतलब you imagine ज़्यादातर बच्चों की जो upbringing रहती है, at least in my society or the way I was brought up, it was very protected. तो मेरी मम्मी जैसे मुझे गली में खेलने नहीं जाने देती थी. और then I went to Chandigarh, started studying for JEE, then I came to Kharagpur. And and Kharagpur is all its own bubble, right? You study education, you fight for an internship, you get a job, you do interhalls. As such, there is no interface with the external world. Actually, India में क्या चल रहा है आपको क्या पता होता है? So I went in with that understanding कि let me just talk to people about what they want to talk about and let me try and understand where are they traveling, why are they traveling. So there was no fixed agenda. Now, purely because we were traveling throughout India and also talking to a variety of people and also with a very open mind without any urge to argue or fight. I was like, I will not fight. Let the person say the most blasphemous stuff. I'll hear it and I'll be calm. That was something which was pre-decided. That's why you'll see people saying the craziest shit and I am not losing my head. And I think then it became more of an edit process. I think in documentaries, editing is very important. Like I had done 120 interviews, but along with my editor, who for Borderlands even got a national award for editing.
Yes.
So we decided that through our film we want to talk about variety of things, and then we decided, मतलब shooting के time पे इतना नहीं सोचा, बट एडिटिंग के टाइम पे बहुत सोचा कि हम 1 घंटे में कैसे इतनी सारी बातें कर सकते हैं एंड हाउ कैन वी सेंसिटिवली डील विद इट. बट फुटेज में फॉर एग्जाम्पल देर आर टू मेनी लव स्टोरीज बिकॉज इट्स फन टू टॉक अबाउट पीपल्स लव स्टोरीज. फिल्म में उतने लव स्टोरीज नहीं है, तो एडिट पे ये ज्यादा हमने सोच के किया था कि थोड़ा इसको डाइवर्स रखेंगे. We'll give a flavor of different emotions, we'll give a flavor of different parts of India, so people's dialects will change. And ultimately, if you see any story, it needs to move. It needs to move in terms of emotion ऊपर नीचे, नहीं तो तुम्हारे लिए boring हो जाएगी.
Correct.
And for us, the easiest way to make you enter the film is through humor. And right in the center is the most intense moments. And we also,
yes.
but then we also let you breathe towards the end. The end is again like light, so that when you leave the film, you're not like यार क्या देख लिया यार, अभी गंदे सपने आएंगे, है ना?
Okay.
अगर हम इंटरवल पे कट कर देंगे जहाँ पे वो एक we have a woman who is running away from domestic violence. You imagine that being the last story, and then you'll be like यार मैं तो ऐसी फिल्में नहीं देखूंगा वापस, because it just sort of leaves you with a certain kind of feeling, right? Which is, I don't think it's a wrong kind of feeling, but I don't think lot of our Indian audiences want to leave a film with that kind of a feeling जहाँ पे they're just shaken up and being like fuck ये ऐसा भी होता है. So we sort of get you into the journey with humor, leave you with humor. बीच में हमको जो serious बातें करनी थी हमने कर ली.
So this was all like very pre-calculated, like before editing, है ना?
No, we discovered it on the edit. तो जैसे शूट के टाइम पे नहीं सोचा, फिर एडिटर के साथ 120 घंटा फुटेज था हमारे पास. तो 120 घंटे का फुटेज मैंने और मेरे एडिटर ने, अनादि नाम है उसका, तो हम दोनों ने बैठ के वो 120 घंटे देखे. फिर हम लोगों ने एक व्हाइट बोर्ड और मार्कर लिया और फिर उस पे हमने प्लॉट किया कि ये कहानी है, ये कहानी है, ये कहानियां इंटरेस्टिंग है, ये 5 लव स्टोरीज है, 5 लव स्टोरीज तो डाल नहीं सकते, कौन सी लव स्टोरी इंटरेस्टिंग है ना? तो that's why you in the beginning you have sort of 2 love stories of one, an Assamese guy who's dating multiple people, and then this lady who wants to be a nurse but cannot be with her lover because of caste. So these 2 love stories made sense to us. Similarly, there was a lot on migration because we were talking to a lot of migrants. But एक नॉर्थ ईस्ट की स्टोरी है जहाँ पे एक लड़की है जो बोलती है कि वो नर्सरीज में काम करती है छोटे बच्चों के साथ, बट खुद का घर मिस करती है, खुद के पेरेंट्स को मिस करती है. सो दिस आयरनी सीम्ड वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग टू मी कि आप बच्चों का ध्यान रख रहे हो किसी अलग जगह में, पर खुद के पेरेंट्स को मिस कर रहे हो. तो वो इमोशन मुझे काफी रिलेटेबल लगा क्योंकि आई एम ऑल्सो माइग्रेंट एंड आई एम अज्यूमिंग दैट एटलीस्ट इन द फर्स्ट ईयर ऑफ JEE preparation, if you were outside your hometown, you would miss your parents. So that's a very relatable emotion. And then some stuff was just beautiful, like I think the Kashmir story was just crazy. Bumping into a transgender person was just crazy. Interviewing a twin, like there are 2 twins राम एंड लक्ष्मण हु वी इंटरव्यू, एंड देन वो आपस में ही बकचोदी कर रहे हैं, एंड टू जस्ट बी लाइक कि यार मैं दो ट्विंस का इंटरव्यू कर रहा हूँ और इसमें कुछ मजेदार निकल आएगा तो अच्छा होगा। तो ये कुछ कुछ जगह थी जहाँ पे मुझे लगा कि यार इनके साथ तो करना चाहिए, एक ट्रांसजेंडर तो होना चाहिए, बिकॉज यू नो वी आर सो यूज्ड टू अ ट्रांसजेंडर पर्सन कमिंग एंड आस्किंग फॉर मनी, दे आर पार्ट ऑफ द कल्चरल मिलियू, एंड बट then they are not seen as people, right? You see them as a nuisance, as an annoying element. But I was like, let me engage, and that conversation was so much fun because they turned out to be a Rajnikant fan, and I am a Rajnikant fan, and we talked about Rajnikant, right?
That's really nice.
So those things were beautiful, and we knew कि यार ये तो शूट के टाइम पे इतना मजा आया था, तो ये तो फिल्म में होनी ही चाहिए।
करेक्ट। सो ये सब जो क्वेश्चंस आप सोचते थे, मतलब आप जो पूछ रहे थे, ये सब स्पॉन्टेनियस आ रहा था आपके पास, या फिर आप सोच के गए थे कि हाँ मुझे ये फ्लो कुछ है, मतलब ये सारे
कुछ भी
स्पॉन्टेनियस
फ्लो नहीं
क्वेश्चंस?
था, सब स्पॉन्टेनियस था, it was all in the moment, that is why I feel it is so beautiful, and it's very difficult to recreate it because it was just so much in the moment. I think the only idea was that लोगों की बातें सुनते हैं, उनसे समझते हैं कि वो क्यों ट्रैवल कर रहे हैं, कहाँ से आ रहे हैं, कहाँ जा रहे हैं, और मोस्टली लोग पैसे कमाने जा रहे थे, तो पैसे क्यों कमा रहे हैं, and I think out of these basic queries people's life stories come out. So there is an Odia guy who's traveling to make money so that he can treat his daughter because the daughter has tumor, and it's a very emotional story. But it's all coming out of these very basic curiosities. And what I realized was कि कोई इतना ही नहीं पूछता यार, मतलब लोग ना क्वेश्चनर बना लेते हैं, फिर वो बहुत डीप पॉलिटिकल और सोशियो पॉलिटिकल अजीब से क्वेश्चन तो बना लेते हैं, बट बेसिक जो क्वेरीज होती हैं किसी की जिंदगी के बारे में, कि तुम कहाँ से हो, तुम कौन हो, तुम क्यों सफर कर रहे हो, तुम यू नो वेरी बेसिक स्टफ, तुम्हें लाइफ में क्या चाहिए, तुम्हारे सपने क्या हैं, ये सवाल बहुत बेसिक है, एंड आई थिंक स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट्स देते हैं, फिर उसके बाद आप फिर करते रहो ऑर्गेनिकली।
करेक्ट, करेक्ट, थैंक यू सो मच। मतलब ये तो आई थिंक इट वाज अ वेरी गुड डिस्क्रिप्शन अबाउट दिस मास्टरपीस। मतलब कैसे आप आए इस चीज के साथ। आई थिंक द वन टेक अवे लाइन फ्रॉम दिस इज कि जो स्पॉन्टेनिटी वाला फैक्टर होता है फिल्म्स में, आई थिंक इट एड्स अ सर्टेन बिट ऑफ यू नो द परफेक्शन वाला जो एलिमेंट होता है वो शायद स्पॉन्टेनिटी से ही आता है, राइट? सो दैट्स समथिंग दैट वी हैव टू टेक अवे फ्रॉम दिस। तो अगले क्वेश्चन पे जाते हैं।
Yeah. So our next question is, in Borderland, you explore the lives of people living near the borders of India. What were some of the surprising stories or insights you discovered during the film?
Right. Yeah, so there was a lot because we made this film for 3 years and we traveled to 20 different border locations. So if I tell you like two, three, I think I was very fascinated by the existence of these Pakistani Hindu bastis in Jodhpur. So, you know, in our mainstream narrative, yeah, media mein, all the Pakistani Hindus are being oppressed in Pakistan, right? They are not in India. बट आई एक्चुअली फाउंड आउट कि जोधपुर में ऐसी बस्तियां हैं जहाँ पे बहुत सारे पाकिस्तानी हिंदू आए हैं, और एंड दे आर ट्राइंग टू बी इंडियंस एंड दे आर लिविंग इन प्रैक्टिकल स्लम्स। सो द वे आर पॉलिटिक्स वर्क्स इज कि हम इस आइडेंटिटी को एज ए टूल यूज करते हैं लोगों को आग लगाने के लिए कि देखो ये हो रहा है, पर एक्चुअली जब वो इंडिया में आ जाते हैं तो उनके साथ क्या होता है, नो वन केयर्स अबाउट इट, एंड आई वांटेड टू टॉक अबाउट इट। सो फिल्म में एक कहानी है, दीपा करके एक लड़की है, and if you see the film is not as such a very political film. उसका सारा politics पर्सनल politics से आता है। दीपा का जो अपना जर्नी है वो एक समझ लो एक बड़े ही ट्रेडिशनल घर में पैदा हुई है जहाँ पे जीन्स पहनना भी मतलब एक फाइट है, मतलब लिपस्टिक लगाना भी फाइट है। अब उस मिलियू में उसके सपने हैं जो वो पूरे करना चाहती है, तो वो मुझे इंटरेस्टिंग लगा था कि अच्छा ऐसी बस्तियां एग्जिस्ट करती हैं। फिर वाइल ड्यूरिंग द प्रोसेस ऑफ द फिल्म वी रियलाइज कि इंडिया बांग्लादेश बॉर्डर पे एक मिलन मेला करके एक इवेंट होता है, जो फिल्म में भी है, फिल्म के क्लाइमैक्स में आता है, जहाँ पे जो पहला बैशाख होता है, बैसाखी जो होती है, तो उस दिन इंडिया और बांग्लादेश के बॉर्डर गार्ड जो हैं लोगों को बॉर्डर फेंस के पास आने देते हैं, एक दूसरे को हैप्पी न्यू ईयर बोलने, 6 घंटे देते हैं वो लोग। एंड इट्स सच एन इमोशनल थिंग, क्योंकि हम लोगों ने मैं हूं ना देखी है, बजरंगी भाईजान देखी है, एंड यू नो लोग ऐसे बॉर्डर तोड़ के भाग के गले वाले मिल जाते हैं, बट दिस वाज अ वेरी रियलिस्टिक वे पीपल मीट एट अ बॉर्डर, देयर इज अ बॉर्डर फेंस, एक साइड पे इंडियंस हैं, बीच में बॉर्डर फेंस है, एक साइड पे बांग्लादेशी हैं, और ये सब रिलेटिव्स हैं। तो वी फॉलोड दिस थ्रू अ कैरेक्टर जिसका जो मायका है वो बांग्लादेश में है अब, क्योंकि जब वो शादी करके आई थी तब बॉर्डर फेंस नहीं होती थी, तो अभी बॉर्डर फेंस आ गई है। तो ये जो मीटिंग थी बड़ी इमोशनल थी। और मेरी कैरेक्टर ने इनफैक्ट एक डंडे पे संतरे लगा के भेजे थे अपनी माँ के लिए बॉर्डर फेंस के थ्रू। तो
My
विच
God.
वाज अ वेरी इमोशनली मूविंग। यू इमेजिन कि तुम लोग अपने माँ बाप से सेपरेटेड हो, बीच में बॉर्डर फेंस है, तुम संतरे भेज रहे हो ऐसे डंडा लगा के, तुम गले भी नहीं मिल सकते। So I felt that was a very emotional thing which we experienced. So on and so forth. Yeah, I don't know. I can go on and on. Like all 20 stories are very personally interesting to me. One of the stories is about my mother. So my mother is part of the film. उनका 13 मिनट का रोल है। तो मैंने उनकी लाइफ के बारे में भी बहुत डिस्कवर किया थ्रू द फिल्म। मैंने कभी उन्हें, मतलब मैं तो सोया रहता था ना घर पे सुबह 6 बजे, बट मेरी मम्मी सुबह 6 बजे उठ के क्या करती हैं वो मैंने फिल्म में देखा, क्योंकि हमने शूट किया कि वो सुबह 6 बजे उठ के करती क्या है। तो मैंने पहली बार देखा, हालांकि मैं जिस दिन शूट हो रहा था उस दिन मैं सो रहा था, मेरा सिनेमेटोग्राफर जग के शूट किया था। और बट फिर फुटेज में मैंने देखा कि मेरी मम्मी करती क्या है 6 बजे उठ के। एंड कुछ नहीं ज्यादा खास नहीं करती कुछ, कपड़े धोती हैं, खाना बनाने की तैयारी करती हैं, पापा के साथ चाय पीती हैं, गाने सुनती हैं। और आई जस्ट नेवर न्यू कि वो दोनों साथ में बैठ के चाय पीते हैं सुबह और गाने सुनते हैं। It's something, I don't know, I never perceived my parents to be still sort of romantic to that level कि ये साथ में बैठ के सुबह चाय और गानों का combination करेंगे। So a lot of learning I feel about the country, about my mother, about my family, about myself. Yeah.
So it was a very reflective movie, I suppose, like from your side as well, and of course, movie mein to tha hi, like there was a lot of stories that captured us a lot. So, do you think like there's a very keen message you want to pass, like the border being some kind of a metaphor? Like, I mean, you had some metaphor in mind, I suppose, because it feels so. I don't know. I just feels from within ki there was a metaphor you were trying to big like just showing the family story. So you were trying to show that wall that sometimes gets created between families, not really the border. Like this time it was the border, but was that in your mind? Like, I mean, were you thinking
So
about this?
so I think in my mind, the metaphor is that there are so many things which continue to divide us. One
Yes.
is the literal border, right?
Border.
But then there are other borders, uh, and all borders. For example, class is one thing. Rich people and poor people are divided. Men and women are divided to some extent by gender. Straight and gay people are divided by the idea of sexuality.
Yeah.
uh, you know, uh, White people are divided from brown people and black people. Color is one thing, race is one thing. So any kind of division, I think the idea was to get at that. And obviously, like, India and Pakistan is kind of a division, right? Because we like to see Pakistan as an enemy. We like to see
Correct.
Bangladeshis all as illegal immigrants. So I was trying to challenge all these notions. Ki yaar, what divides us is sort of less powerful than what unites us. And
Correct.
what unites us is the human experience, is the ability to feel, is the ability to have relationships. अगर किसी किसी माँ बाप के साथ किसी बच्चे की रिलेशनशिप की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ, वो किसी भी कल्चर के लिए सच है ना? तो वो इंडिया में भी बेस कर सकता हूँ, नीदरलैंड्स में बेस कर सकता हूँ, अफ्रीका में बेस कर सकता हूँ। बट एक बच्चे का अपनी माँ के साथ या बाप के साथ हमेशा लगाव होता है। तो देन how are we so divided while actually having the same experiences? I wanted to point out that irony. So the
That
film
is
is actually like it is metaphorical in that sense. Yeah.
that makes so much sense now. I mean, I had like it was a very long form like in like what do you say, you can say a dream for me ki I wanted to talk to a filmmaker and know what exactly was in his head like while making a film. I think it's a dream come true for me because I'm I what I was thinking I could actually clarify from you. This was what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was thinking, and it was a very, I mean, it's a very positive notion that you tried to show in this movie. And I'm suggesting everyone who will be watching this podcast, please go on and please see the Unreserved and Borderlands. These are some masterpieces, and it's from our own alumni. So I suppose you should like go and give it a watch.
Thank
Right.
you.
So, Samarth, there are few Indian movies that truly celebrate and give respect to scientific achievements. I can just give you like some example. For example, the recent movie, The Rocket Tree, Mission Mangal. these kind of movies. So what are your thoughts on the lack of representation? There are very few of these movies, right? I mean, our scientific culture or our achievements that have been in the past, since you are more a documentary based filmmaker, like as we've seen, so what are your thoughts on this lack of representation that we've seen in the Indian movies, considering you also from the technology background, at least I mean, I know that question is a little low, but since we have all been in the Indian Institute of Technology, what are your feelings about why this thing is not being brought up? Why our scientific achievements are not more celebrated in movies like foreigners do?
Right, right, right. Now, I actually start from Kharagpur only. And, we were having this small joke around how, there used to be MSc degree. Now all of it is BS. And
Yes,
my take on this is true because most of us are bullshitting our way through
correct.
it, right? So BS is a very apt word for these degrees now. But honestly, I learned none of engineering while at Kharagpur. I mean, it is just hilarious for me to imagine that I have a background in technology. I have a lot of, I think, respect for people who learn coding and do very well. But I think coders are the most technical people usually. And there were obviously some people in my department also who went and did
Mm-hmm.
PhDs. So no disrespect to them. But I think
Mm-hmm.
90% of KGPNs are not scientists, or
That's right. That's right.
I wouldn't say they necessarily have a background in technology. They end up having a background in management. And so
Yeah.
most of us end up being managers, and I think half of us will end up doing MBAs and becoming consultants and bankers and so on and so forth. So
Mm.
I think the basic problem starts there. When you come to India's best engineering college and do not become an engineer, I think there's something very fundamentally flawed in the nature of our society. And I think what is fundamentally flawed is ultimately that we are a developing country. So the dreams that people have are very different. They do not necessarily aspire to be scientists, but I think the basic aspiration is to be richer, is to have a
Richer.
better life. And and uh, and once obviously you have that, then you start thinking about other things. Then you start thinking about the society, about कि मुझे इसके आगे कुछ करना है. Then a Bill Gates will start a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and
Correct.
then basically Microsoft will have its own, all
Too much
companies will
truth.
then start doing social sector work, right?
Yes.
And then so I think most of our country is honestly poor. And the moment you go out of your bubbles, for example, Bangalore में ऐसे meetups हो सकते हैं, 20 अमीर लोग आपस में मिलके दारू पी रहे हैं किसी pub में. But the moment you go out and you step out into the vaster India, you start realizing there's so much inequality, and those people do not want to see serious cinema. तो हमारे बॉलीवुड में अभी तक हैप्पी एंडिंग को चैलेंज नहीं कर पा रहे हम, कि सारी
Mm.
फिल्मों की हैप्पी एंडिंग होनी चाहिए. You cannot imagine having a Shah Rukh Khan film and ending it on a sad note where Shah Rukh Khan does not win or a Salman Khan does not win. Why?
Mhm.
Because I think the common person projects his dreams onto these films, and उसकी खुद की लाइफ में इतना दर्द है कि उसको नहीं देखना वो स्क्रीन पे, और उसको कुछ टेक्निकल भी नहीं देखना, उसको दिमाग नहीं लगाना. तो any film I think which tries to go a little more into the technicalities or technology or science, I think
Mhm.
people don't want to watch it. People call it
Correct.
independent cinema, they call it art cinema. And even films like Mission Mangal or Rocketry, I think science is like an excuse to sort of
Mm.
tell something else. It's not really, it's using science, but I mean the message is something else entirely.
Something else.
Like I
Yes.
wouldn't even call Mission Mangal a very serious science film. Like you don't understand, I think much about the mission actually, right?
Yeah.
So but I think what happens is that this scientific event was a moment of pride for our country, and our country likes to celebrate moments of such pride. So Mission Mangal became a great point of celebrating. So at least people will remember that event. They may not necessarily understand the science of it, but I think that's a problem. I think our country loves escapist cinema. So जब तक वो escapism रहेगा तब तक ज्यादा इंटेलिजेंट सिनेमा मुझे नहीं लगता हम बना सकते हैं. तो थोड़ा डम डाउन करना पड़ेगा. एंड एंड अगर डम डाउन नहीं करे तो आपकी ऑडियंस रिड्यूस हो जाएगी,
Reduce the
है ना?
child.
तो
Yes.
as someone who actually comes from this background, I have realized that audiences want emotion.
Mm.
So in my films, my aspiration is to pour as much emotion as possible. अब and I honestly and unfortunately do not have any affinity to science. I feel कि मैं नहीं हूँ, मेरा science background नहीं है. It is just funny for me to imagine कि मेरा science background है. मैंने नहीं सीखा. मेरा पर्सनल जर्नी भी है, मतलब मेरे थर्ड ईयर तक सारे EX और A ग्रेड जो आते थे वो इलेक्टिव्स में आते थे. मेरे डिपार्टमेंट के सब्जेक्ट्स में मेरा हमेशा B और C आता था. तो मुझे वो बहुत फनी लगता था कि ऐसे इंग्लिश में EX आ गया है और फ्लूइड मैकेनिक्स में C आ गया है. तो
मेक सेंस.
एंड ऑलरेडी आई मीन विद एटलीस्ट JEE एंड ऑल तो बहुत सिनेमा बन गया है. आई थिंक कोटा फैक्ट्री आ गया, फिर अपना वरुण ग्रोवर ने ऑल इंडिया रैंक बना दिया, है ना. तो वो वाली फिल्में बन रही हैं JEE प्रेपरेशन में. बट यार हम लोगों का स्ट्रगल भी ना, ज्यादातर लोगों का स्ट्रगल वही है, JEE क्लियर करना. उसके बाद कौन साइंस कर रहा है? हम लोग लैब में जाके 10 लोग नाटक करते हैं एक एक्सपेरिमेंट करने का, सीनियर की फाइल से कॉपी कर लेते हैं. मतलब आई मीन आई डोंट थिंक वी आर वेल इक्विप्ड आल्सो टू टेल अ साइंटिफिक स्टोरी.
That is so true. Also like मान लीजिए like मेरा एक like इस पे एक फॉलो अप है छोटा सा कि मान लीजिए आपको एक साइंटिफिक मूवी बनानी है, ठीक है, और आपको मतलब कोई एक ऐसी स्टोरी बतानी है हमारे पास के लिए, मतलब इंडिया की मान लीजिए जो ट्रू स्टोरी है उसकी डॉक्यूमेंट्री एक आपको बनानी है. तो आपको आपने जो भी मेंशन किया ये सब, तो लाइक आप इसको कैसे टैकल करोगे? मतलब आपका माइंडसेट क्या रहेगा कि मैं अगर ऐसी एक मूवी बनाऊंगी तो इसको एक कमर्शियल सक्सेस कैसे हम बना सकते हैं? कि मतलब
Yeah,
व्हाट विल
I
बी आवर
think
अप्रोच?
Nolan has done a very good thing with Oppenheimer, right? So
Absolutely.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
Indian filmmakers need to think on that level. Ki how do we make something like that into a accessible thing? For example, Oppenheimer is about this Trinity test and
Yes.
the nuclear weapon, but ultimately it's about moral ambiguity. कि आप दुनिया में ऐसा एक वेपन ला रहे हो, उसके रेपरकशंस क्या हैं, और उसको भी अगर आप अनरैप करोगे ना, तो इट्स ऑल्सो अबाउट अ हस्बैंड वाइफ रिलेशनशिप. क्योंकि ओपनहाइमर ने अपनी वाइफ पे चीट किया है, तो वो जो थीम है ना वो पूरी फिल्म में आती रहती है. अब ये वाली जो थीम है ना, ये किसी भी ले पर्सन के लिए बड़ी रिलेटेबल है कि चीटिंग का केस हो गया, प्यार का केस हो गया, एंड उसके ऊपर फिर जो फिलोसॉफिकल लेयर है मॉरल एम्बिग्यूटी की, वो भी बंदा सोच सकता है कि इतनी ज्यादा ताकत अगर मेरे हाथ में आ गई, मैं उसको यूज कैसे करूं. तो again, ultimately it is not about the inner workings of the bomb. So I think जिस लॉजिक से ह्यूमैनिटीज और सोशल साइंसेस डिपार्टमेंट शुरू किया गया था IITs में, कि हाउ डू वी पुट अ ह्यूमन फेस टू साइंस, जो कि बिल्कुल आई थिंक नहीं होता है कैंपस में. वी डोंट टेक दैट डिपार्टमेंट सीरियसली अनफॉर्चुनेटली. बट that's what I think. If I was given a science film, I would like to like apply all these lenses to a scientific story. Again, because I think hardcore science is something that will only interest like a very core few people. Even we will not watch it. You'll probably feel like we are in a boring lecture, right? But the moment you add this human layer of moral decision making, a relationship, that is when it becomes interesting. And I think Nolan does it well in some of his films. कुछ फिल्मों में बिल्कुल खराब हो जाता है, जैसे Tenet is probably his worst film. But in a film like Inception or Oppenheimer, it comes together beautifully. Why do you think Inception works? You've seen Inception?
Yes, we've seen.
Yes. तो guess why does it work for you? कि क्यों connect करती है वो film?
Vivek?
The characters are emotionally connected between themselves firstly, and then the concept of the dreams in the dreams arrives. Firstly,
Yes.
the characters are
तो point out like
emotionally
one interesting relationship, one interesting emotional relationship in the film. You're right, but give me one relationship.
I will
मेरे
say
लिए हाँ बोलो
go on. नहीं, go.
मैं पता है मेरे को ये मूवी इंटरेस्ट इसलिए क्योंकि मुझे समझ ही नहीं आई. तो 2 और 3 बार देखना पड़ा मुझे.
Okay, but if you see, it is a difficult film to understand. बार देख सकते हैं. But the relationship between Leonardo DiCaprio and his wife, and that he feels that maybe he has killed his wife.
हाँ.
तो वो जो एक तो हस्बैंड वाइफ रिलेशनशिप इज अ वेरी रिलेटेबल रिलेशनशिप, एंड वो पूरी फिल्म में एक सवाल रहता है उसके दिमाग में कि ही कैन नॉट गेट हिज वाइफ आउट ऑफ हिज हेड. वो मर चुकी है लेकिन उसके ड्रीम्स में आती रहती है, और क्योंकि उसने सुसाइड किया था ये सोच के कि वो जिंदा है या नहीं है, राइट? कि वो ड्रीम में है कि नहीं है, उसको लग रहा था वो ड्रीम में, तो उसने सुसाइड कर लिया था. So this whole idea has just completely destroyed Leonardo DiCaprio's mind, and which is what makes it emotionally very powerful. कि यार ये ड्रीम्स वाली बकचोदी चल रही है, बट इसमें एक हस्बैंड भी है जो अपने वाइफ के लॉस के साथ कोप कर रहा है. So you imagine, for example, you are in a relationship and you lose your partner. You have to cope with that loss, and you cannot imagine, for example, it would be so hard to imagine that your partner no longer exists. Correct. So that I think is the approach with which scientific films could become interesting. Very long answer हमने to and fro भी कर लिया. You see how much you want to keep it.
That was, I mean, I'm really enjoying it. I think Vivek also, like, because Vivek and I both, like, Vivek actually is a good like film fan. बहुत मूवी का उनका शौक है. तो इनसे, क्योंकि इनके साथ मैंने एक साल पूरा रहा है, मतलब like second year में we were like roommates. So I actually, that was so contagious even I like started appreciating movies after that. So kind of this conversation is like really, I mean, it's kind of so nice for us because we are getting to understand the intricacies of movies, not the superficial picture that everyone sees. I mean, laptop पे screen, big screens पे सब देखते हैं, but जो अंदर क्या हो रहा है, जो filmmaker के मन में क्या चल रहा है, it's a very big thing for us to know. So thank you, Samarth.
That's also science. There is a science of storytelling. So I think that's the science which I think if you're all interested in filmmaking, you should try and understand the science of storytelling. So screenplay writing एक पूरा field है जिसमें लोग stories engineer कर रहे हैं. Like there are story engineers. क्योंकि उसका एक structure होता है. Like एक I don't know, thermodynamics में AC, fridge, heater, इन सब के models होते हैं. Stories का अपना एक model होता है कि यार ये सब करोगे तो एक बढ़िया story बन जाएगी. Which is like quite mindfuck to me कि यार over the course of centuries humans have figured out कि stories का भी एक science है.
तो आप आइडिया दे रहे हो, अब फिर एक डिपार्टमेंट बन जाएगा इसका हमारे यहाँ पे.
यार डिपार्टमेंट तो आइडियली है, HSS है, वो उसको वो काम करना चाहिए. And I think वो करवाना चाहिए. I think we have some very good professors also. But I think there needs to be a long-term vision as to how this, how things can come together. And also like obviously the syllabus needs to be updated for almost every department. I'm like 100% sure mechanical में अभी भी वही पढ़ रहे हैं जो मैं पढ़ के गया. तो
आपने subjects का जो नाम बताया वो सेम ही है, मतलब अभी
सेम ही subjects हैं. तो I mean things need to evolve, right?
चलो, we can move on to the next question.
Yeah. So my next question is, in light of recent developments, filmmakers are increasingly willing to take risks with substantial budgets and collaborate with the international talents, such as Hans Zimmer will be composing music for Nitish Tiwari's Ramayana, along with the A.R. Rahman, which has the budget of $100 million. So what do you think the future of Indian cinema will look like?
Yeah. So I think, see, when we are imagining the future of Indian cinema, and I find this question very fascinating because we're talking about Ramayana, Hans Zimmer, and $100 million budget. Do you both know about Cannes Film Festival?
Yes, we've heard of it.
You've heard about Cannes Film Festival?
Yes.
You know that on 25th May, which is 3 days back, an Indian film won at the festival.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you name the film?
And I don't know about name, but the artist, some Kapadia.
है ना? तो obviously you know Ramayana, you know $100 million, you know Hans Zimmer, but you do not know that an Indian film 3 days back has won the runners-up, which is called the Grand Prix Award at Cannes Film Festival. The film is All We Imagine Is Light. The filmmaker is Payal Kapadia, and this is in 8 decades. For the first time, an Indian film has won an award like this. Now, for me, the future of Indian cinema that I imagine is where people talk about films like that, and they're not stuck with budgets and canvases and talking about films which I mean are gonna be so run of the mill, even if they're pretending to be very path-breaking. We had a Ramayana reboot with Prabhas, and we've all seen what came out of it. 450 crore rupees were spent on it. So I mean, we need to make big films. We need to tell our stories. I am a huge Hans Zimmer and A.R. Rahman fan. But when I think about future of Indian cinema, I would like to imagine a cinema which is not just catering to, the masala idea of cinema, or trying to tell a story which uh, I feel is not refreshing. I feel, it's an eternal story. Ramayana is an eternal story, but again, and we need to tell it again and again. But I feel the future of cinema will really be dictated by the newer stories. We need to come up with newer stories because life has moved on, right? We also need to process what is happening in modern India. We love talking about Ramayana and Mahabharata because it is our mythical idea of what the past was. But abhi kya ho raha hai? Matlab, we also need to talk about that. So I think the future of India and future of Indian cinema will be dictated more by films like that. And when you have a maker like Payal Kapadia, who's I'm sure has made this film at not $100 million, but maybe 10 or 20 crore rupees, and still been able to garner a laurel which none of the Indians have garnered in the last 8 decades. We need to talk more about those kind of films, and we need to find those kind of films. This is my understanding of where I think our cinema has to head for us to become a more cinema literate and a more cinema fanatic country in a cinephile sense. We are very cinema crazy, but I think we are cinema crazy about personalities and not cinema. Like,
Absolutely.
an animal, Jawan or a Pathan makes 1,000 crores, not because the story is so good, but because everyone's just crazy about Shah Rukh,
Yes, the
Salman,
commercial
Ranveer.
aspects.
है ना? तो आप जब ये रामायण बना रहे हो और जब हैंस जिमर और रहमान को ला रहे हो और इतना बजट अनाउंस कर रहे हो, तो you're not telling anything about how you will make the film, na? Your approach, your story. You are only doing like some sort of vulgar show of money. So, I mean, that is my understanding. I mean, so we need to obsess less over budgets and more about quality, I see.
Yeah.
Right. Isn't it more about the audience now? Like, because I think the announcers know that यही सब चीजें हैं जो मतलब मेरे audience को मतलब excited रखेंगी आगे के लिए.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. So
so I
I think
think
that is a difference, right? Because I think the stream of cinema that at least I belong to or I want to belong to, I would say it's more of an internal journey, and the outer journey is accidental. It needs to be there, but I think I don't start with an aspiration कि मैं 100 crore रुपए बनाने वाली film लिखूंगा. So I feel it also requires a very very specific skill set. ऐसा नहीं है कि मैं आज decide करूंगा तो मैं 100 crore की film लिख दूंगा. It also requires a very specific skill set, right? But I think it's the difference between getting a job at Facebook and starting a Facebook.
makes
You know
sense. Yeah.
that you can get a job at Facebook and it'll make you secure for your life, but you may want to like start a Facebook and you may fail, or you may create the next Facebook जिसमें risk बहुत है, and फिर उसमें आप you start small and then you try to make something based on some sort of motivation.
Correct.
So I just feel like there are two cinemas that exist. One is this very mainstream Bollywood side of cinema, and one is this independent cinema. And I think I belong to this independent
Independent
stream. Yeah.
Sense. All right, that was quite an insightful answer, and I hope like all the aspiring filmmakers that will be watching this. I mean, this is a very big takeaway. I mean, once you aspire to become a filmmaker, you have to like leave the lens of a normal audience. You have to jump onto the lens of a real cinematographer who knows what exactly cinema is, right? I mean, who understands what cinema is, who knows what elements are there that is gonna, make a cinema a masterpiece, right? Because हमारे लिए तो बस मतलब थोड़ा मसाला दिखा दो, थोड़ा सा fights दिखा दो, काफी है. That's the best movie we've seen. So Samarth, with the upcoming age of AI, like we are having trailers which are fully edited by AI, and like AI is a question which every interview is like now creeping into. So like keeping this in mind, what changes or trends are you predicting in the film industry in the next 5 to 10 years, keeping AI in mind, and how this can be utilized better into movies?
I think the one of the biggest applications I can see of AI is in terms of pitching. For example, today I come to you with a pitch of a film. I give you a write-up. I show you photos, references. I think with the help of I can actually create a prototype. I can show you the film before making it. That it'll look like this, it'll feel like this. And I think that's a very powerful tool. Even in terms of shooting, many times till the time we don't gather the whole crew together and start shooting, we do not know how is it going to work out. And that's a lot of risk. I think with AIs coming in, a lot of pre-production is possible. And that to me is a big possibility. And I think writers are already using AI assistants. I'm sure you are using AI for your assignments. I am somehow pretty. Are you are using?
Of
Right?
course.
So right. So even writers are using. Not everyone is a purist, and everyone does not want to write from their like ऐसे दिल टटोल के मैं कुछ निकालूंगा. कई लोगों का दिल नहीं है पर writing फिर भी करनी है. So they have chat GPT. And so I think the way we write is changing, the way we market is changing. I think this whole idea of pitching and storyboarding is going to change big time. And obviously, there are AI films now. Like people are giving prompts and making films. So I am assuming that there is more of this AI generated art in terms of cinema that's going to come out. Although I don't know. I am inclined to believe that you need some sort of human intervention to make it really emotional and powerful. पर हो सकता है कि वो ह्यूमन इंटरवेंशन कम होता जाए. आई मीन you may reduce the number of people you need to make a film because of AI. But I think at the core एक इंसान रहना पड़ेगा.
Correct.
But I'll be shocked like अगर मैं ऐसे 20 साल बाद यही वाला पॉडकास्ट देख रहा हूँ और थिएटर में AI डायरेक्टेड फिल्में लग रही हैं और लोग जाके देख रहे हैं और सीटियां मार रहे हैं. मतलब I'll want to not see that future. Somehow I don't want that future to exist because I think uh, there is a beauty to original stories and that originality comes from people, right? But अगर AI देने लगे वो originality तो कितना dystopian लग रहा है. मतलब मेरे को सारे आर्टिस्ट खत्म हो गए, अनएम्प्लॉयड हो गए हैं, फिर हर किसी ने डॉयचे बैंक ज्वाइन कर लिया है.
हाँ, इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकर बन रहा है हर कोई.
हाँ, तो I mean it's a little sad kind of world, no?
Correct. Yes.
So Samarth, you have chosen the career path which is very rare, and someone with true love for cinema decides to join such a career path. Was there any abba nahi manenge moment when you decided to pursue filmmaking as a career?
So there was a amma nahi manenge moment. Like my father was pretty chill, and देखो फिल्में बनाना हमारी कंट्री में प्रिविलेज का काम है. मतलब if your family is decent in terms of finances, like my family was not dependent on me for money, तो मैं रिस्क ले सकता था. And my father wasn't so concerned because his concern was I should be happy, and they could see that I am not really enjoying my job. So my father was okay, but my mother lost her shit. मतलब my mother was like, she was calling me every day and she's like, अच्छा ये कंपनी नहीं अच्छी लग रही तो टाटा मोटर्स ज्वाइन कर लो, ये नहीं अच्छी लगी तो लार्सन एंड टुब्रो ज्वाइन कर लो. And any company that she's a very, I would say, stereotypical homemaker. And उनको 3-4 कंपनीज के नाम ही पता है, पर उन्होंने वो सारी कंपनीज के नाम ले लिए हर बार कॉल करके कि बेटा ये TCS ज्वाइन कर लो. तो आई वाज लाइक यार मैं आपसे बात नहीं कर सकता जब तक मैं थोड़े पैसे नहीं कमा लेता ना एज अ फिल्म मेकर. लाइक obviously like from working with ITC I was earning a lot of money. All of a sudden मैं बॉम्बे में हूँ और मेरे महीने की सैलरी 5,000 रुपए हो गई है एकदम से. So it was like I'm not making money practically. ये 5,000 रुपए भी as a I don't know बख्शीश टाइप कुछ दे रहे हैं मेरे प्रोड्यूसर्स मुझे. तो it took me some time to start making money. But मैंने उन्हें बोला यार कि जब तक मैं बॉम्बे में रहना खुद अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकता मैं आपसे बात ही नहीं करूंगा. तो मैंने उनसे 6 महीने बात ही नहीं की. And I think that was very good for that time. And the moment I started making money, and obviously मैंने ऐसा इमोशनल अत्याचार किया है उन पे 6 महीने बात नहीं करके, तो फिर तो उन्होंने बोलना बंद कर दिया कि तुम कुछ और करो. बट धीरे धीरे the money started coming in. Then once we got national awards, so ultimately I realized parents want to brag to their neighbors about their kids and to the relatives. Ultimately, if she goes to my maternal house एंड मासी से मिलेंगी, मासी अपने बेटे की बढ़ाई करेंगे, तो उनके पास भी कुछ होना चाहिए ना अपने बेटे के लिए कुछ बोलने के लिए. सो द मोमेंट आई स्टार्टेड गिविंग हर दैट इज द मोमेंट व्हेन इट कंप्लीटली स्टॉप्ड. द होल रिपल्शन टू दिस करियर चॉइस वैनिश्ड बिकॉज देन अरे मेरे बच्चे ने तो ये किया, मेरे बच्चे की तो अखबार में फोटो आ गई, मेरे बच्चे पे तो आर्टिकल आ गया यार इंडियन एक्सप्रेस में. तो I think it's ultimately about that. And over time, it's been okay. But I think that initial 1 year was very tricky. And because also like I was in a relationship and even my partner did not know that I want to make films. मुझे भी नहीं पता था ना, मैं तो ऐसे ही एक दिन बैठे बैठे I'm talking to her and I'm like, यार, I think I should be a filmmaker. And then and because we've already imagined getting married, हमने बच्चों के भी नाम रख दिए. वो ऑलरेडी काम कर रही थी, मेरा डुअल डिग्री था, तो हम लोगों ने ऐसे पूरा फ्यूचर अपना इमेजिन कर दिया. एंड ऑल ऑफ अ सडन एवरीथिंग चेंजेस. तो आई मीन ऑब्वियसली दैट होल line of thought led to a breakup. But so that one first year was difficult because of complications with my mother, complications with my partner. But Abba was very supportive. Abba was like कि मैं हूँ तेरे साथ.
That's quite an Indian home story, and I think मम्मी पापा ये पॉडकास्ट ना देखे इमोशनल डैमेज हो सकता है, मतलब स्पेशली मम्मी. Right. So that is quite something. I mean, अभी भी हम अगर कुछ नया मतलब especially for middle class people, I mean, when we think of something new, something out of the box, I think that's one thing that stops us from, taking like a jump or a leap. कि मतलब घर पे क्या बोलेंगे, कैसे बोलेंगे, मतलब because like I don't know why this is imbibed in our like in our memory chip कि मतलब जो मिडिल क्लास वाले होते हैं दे कांट टेक रिस्क. मतलब स्टार्टअप्स वगैरह हो गया, मतलब ये जो चीजें जो रिस्क लेके की जाती हैं वो यूजुअली द पीपल फ्रॉम दिस societal like division, they don't really attempt. So I think stories like yours are kind of a guiding light to them कि मतलब यार एक बार लेके तो देखो और एक बार मेहनत करके देखो, उसमें क्या पता कुछ हो जाए, right? So a good message
But
to all of them.
I also feel that we take risks very seriously. Like especially coming
Yes.
from IITs, I think we're in a very privileged position. For me, for example, I was like मैं 6 महीने try करता हूँ, अगर कुछ नहीं होगा तो मैं क्या, what is the worst that can happen? And I was like, I'll become a tuition teacher. I'll train students to clear JEE, and that trade also has a lot of money.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
I could easily make more than 1 lakh per month, which is I think not a big number for obviously an IIT, and like we aspire to earn crores and crores of money. But India का top 1% नहीं कमाता है महीने का 1 लाख. तो अगर even if I fail, what is the worst that will happen to me? You're still making more than 1 lakh rupees per month. But I think the whole idea is we are also always comparing ourselves, right? So the moment you start comparing yourself, then obviously everyone's ultimately benchmarking themselves to Ambani. So अब उस रेस में तो फिर आप obviously then one failure can lead to not being Ambani, right? So
yes,
you are like, I mean I think the problem is we take failure too seriously. And if you are open to failing once, and I think a lot of startup founders especially I feel undergo this journey कि startup नहीं workout किया. But again, like startup के साथ ये रहता है कि तुम्हें funding मिल जाती है, तो you're always getting great salaries and all. But we need to also acknowledge कि एक तो middle class का problem है, but being from an IIT gives you a lot of privilege and more risk taking capacity. नहीं workout हुआ, someone from your batch or senior batch will have a startup, they'll I'm sure give you a job opportunity. तो हो जाता है मतलब. Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah, correct. So Samarth, like I mean, we had a lot of questions, and I think we boiled this down to like 8 to 10 questions now. And I suppose मतलब मुझे पता नहीं था कि मैं मतलब इस इंटरव्यू में इतना मतलब हो जाऊंगा कि मेरे पास और बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन हैं, विवेक के पास भी शायद होंगे, बट आई एम श्योर लाइक टाइम कंस्ट्रेंट भी कोई चीज है. सो लाइक फाइनली जस्ट कमिंग डाउन टू द फाइनल क्वेश्चन. सो कोई जो हमारे केजीपी से मान लीजिए जिसको फिल्म मेकिंग वगैरह करना है, फिल्म मेकिंग इंडस्ट्री में आना है, तो सम एडवाइस, सम लाइक गोल्डन लाइन फ्रॉम यू, फ्रॉम सच एन एस्टैब्लिश्ड फिल्म मेकर, कैन वी हैव सच अ गुड line for them कि मतलब this is what you have to keep in mind if you want to get into the filmmaking industry? और जनरली भी अगर आपको कुछ बोलना है, एक मैसेज देना है केजीपीएंस को जो ये देखेंगे, तो प्लीज अगर आप कह सके तो.
right. So I think I'm still on my journey. Like you're always getting
Yes,
established. Every film
definitely.
is a journey to get established again. But I feel जिनको फिल्में बनानी है, I think you should watch great films. You should read about films. You should read and watch and try and understand what part of filmmaking are you interested in. On campus filmmaking activities में participate करो, try and join TFPS, try and make your own film, try and work in ad design. There are movie making competitions, I'm sure. Inter IIT Tech में recently I came on campus as a judge, so I saw all the IITs making films. So there is a very rich, vibrant culture of filmmaking on campus now. Second thing is, if you're very serious about this, try and pursue education in films. मैंने नहीं किया, mine was a very risky way, but I feel there are few alumni. One of them is Lokesh Deshmukh. He's in FTII. FTII, Film and Television Institute of India, is the IIT of film education. This is how I like to put it. And there is something called SRFTI, Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute, which is the NIT of film education. That is in Calcutta. So we have this number 1, number 2 film school in India. Check out their website. They have 3-year courses where you get properly trained as a filmmaker. And when you graduate with a network. जैसे IIT एक ठप्पा है, FTII भी एक ठप्पा है. So the moment you graduate with an FTII degree, people take you seriously. So people like Rajkumar Hirani are from FTII. He studied editing there. Vidhu Vinod Chopra, or even Rajkumar Rao, or many actors, actresses, filmmakers. They're all from that field, that college. And if you don't want to go to college, then you should try and figure out what kind of films you want to make. Write to people, assist them, work on your own ideas. There is enough on the internet to teach you a lot of stuff. Yeah, but I think you need to do something about it. I mean, you need to begin at some point. And I personally advise that education is a great way. Like, I did not go to a film school, but given a choice, if I knew in my college itself that I want to be a filmmaker, I would have tried to get into a film school. That's my most bare minimum advice.
All right. Thank you so much, Samarth. I mean, that was the most genuine advice we can get. I mean, I personally didn't know about FTI. I have heard about SRFTI, Satyajit Ray's Film Technical University institution, but this, I think this guided path, although a very brief one, I suppose this will be at least a starting point from most of the filmmakers in our college. And guys, if you're seeing this, I suppose you have had like all the elements that you need to get going with your filmmaking, or get going with anything that you feel that is niche. I'm sure Samarth must have felt कि मतलब filmmaking तो कोई भी नहीं करता. I mean, 1 मिनट के लिए तो आपको लगा ही होगा कि मतलब यार ये चीज यार थोड़ी सी नीचे तो है, मतलब ठीक है, थोड़ा सा रिस्क तो है इसमें. सो एनीवन, अगर आपको ऐसा लग रहा हो तो प्लीज आप समर्थ की स्टोरी को देखिए, उन्होंने क्या अचीव किया, उन्होंने कैसे किया है. राइट, इट्स अ वेरी बिग मोटिवेशन. एंड समर्थ, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस. मतलब आपका टाइम निकाल के आप आए, मतलब हमें बहुत अच्छा लगा. हमने 90 मिनट्स जो भी बातें की, आई मीन इट्स गोइंग टू रेजोनेट फॉर मी फॉर अ वेरी लॉन्ग टाइम. ऑल्दो आई एम नॉट इनटू फिल्म मेकिंग, बट जस्ट लाइक जो आप मेटाफर अपनी मूवीज में बताते हो ना, वही मेटाफर अभी है कि मतलब फिल्म मेकिंग नहीं, बट कुछ भी नीचे अगर मैं बाद में ट्राई करने का कोशिश करूँ, तो आई जस्ट रिमेंबर योर स्टोरी. Thank you
I'm
so
glad.
much.
And thank you, Shivam. Thank you, Vivek. I had a lovely conversation with you, and I hope more and more filmmakers come out of Kharagpur, and more scientists come out of Kharagpur. More and more technical people also come out, and I'm glad to participate.